Hello and welcome to the final episode of our second season in the bike lane. And thanks to you, it's been a joy to actually be able to deliver it. We've really enjoyed reading your comments, the topics that we've discussed, your varying views, and what's on your mind is one of the segments that we've really enjoyed delivering. But we've got big plans for the future, so stick with us, more feedback on this episode, and tell us what else you want us to talk about. So, given it's our last one for the season, we've got a huge episode in store. Geraint Thomas, we catch up with him and he gives us the inside word at Team Sky. Froome and Wiggins, how'd you like to manage that relationship? We also speak with Robbie McEwen, who gives us his view on how things are travelling at Orica-GreenEDGE and a prediction on the prospects of Cadel Evans at the Tour de France. We've got the normal segments. We've got what's on your mind, of course. We've got the Target Healthy Living tips. And we've also got the HOT LAP, where the Olympic Games gold medalist Scott McGrory goes up against the former junior ice hockey player, Wade Wallace. Looking forward to seeing the result. And we've got a special guest on the show, unfortunately in Australia for the first time at this time of year for a long time, Lee Howard. I'm sure you'd rather not be here.
Yeah, unfortunately had a small crash on stage 6 of the Giro in one of the sprint stages. Broke my collarbone and had to make an early departure.
Well, you've gone to extreme lengths to avoid the snow. And still cold here, but it's a little bit warmer than there. So we're going to kick it off with the Giro d'Italia. Let's get into it. So the first Grand Tour of the season has been run and won, and for the first time it's a Sicilian who goes out on top, with Vincenzo Nibali getting the win ahead of Rigoberto Urán, and Cadel Evans was in third place. So he won it, and he won it convincingly. We'll leave you to lastly, and you give us the insider's run. Scott, how was it won?
Well, there were a couple of points throughout the race that were quite significant. And firstly, it was the wet roads that was the undoing of Bradley Wiggins, the Tour de France champion from last year. So that was a surprise to see him descending so poorly, which took him out of the race. That wasn't how it was won. First time trial for me really did set up Vincenzo Nibali in a good performance. But really, it was the stage that was won by Rigoberto Urán. And the way that Nibali looked so good when he was going uphill. And he dropped his chain, put it back on again, and just the acceleration back to the Cadel Evans group.
And the composure.
Past.
The composure.
He looked very comfortable
in that situation. Yeah. What was it for you, Wade, that really stood out?
Well, it was really a race to attrition of the Grand GC contenders, but it wasn't until the final time trial stage that Nibali showed me how strong he was, right? To put a minute into second place at that point of the third week of the race was incredible.
It was head and shoulders, wasn't it? As somebody who should have been in the race for a bit longer if it wasn't for injury. What did you make of Nibali's performance?
Yeah, he obviously showed that he was a level above everyone else. I mean, I think the first big indication of that was the first time trial. Okay, he didn't win, but he put in such a good, strong performance that he showed for someone who was not a pure climber, but almost a pure climber. He's gone and put his cards on the table and said, I'm here to win.
And last year at the Tour de France, he lost 2 minutes and 3 minutes to Wiggins in the time trials, whereas at the Giro, he lost a handful of seconds. Admittedly, Wiggins wasn't 100%, but we saw a lot of improvement against the clock from Vincenzo Nibali. What about Cadel Evans? I think Cadel Evans will have increased the ratings on SBS quite a bit. Cadel, as an Australian in the peloton, how is he regarded amongst the other young Aussies?
Well, he's an idol, isn't he? First Australian to ever win the Tour de France. It speaks for itself. And I think the Giro was it was a good race for him. He was very consistent. Okay, he consistently lost little bits of time here and there, and then he had quite an average uphill time trial. But overall, I think he'll be pretty happy with where he ended up.
Do you get much of a chance in the peloton these days to talk to Cadel? I know you have to go up to the front of the peloton to do that because he doesn't go too far down, but does he talk to the younger riders much?
Yeah, he does. He spends a lot of time talking to us, and I know he spent a lot of time chatting with Luke Durbridge especially. But yeah, you're right in saying he does stick towards the front of the bunch. He's a seasoned GC rider, and they all tend to stick around the front of the bunch for most of the stages.
Where does he go from here? Obviously, he's not racing from now to the Tour de France. Did we see the best of Cadel at the Giro? I don't think we did, but how far off it was he?
Oh, look, I think he's still got another step to go. And look, the Giro d'Italia is an incredibly difficult race. The mountains are steeper than they are at the Tour de France. The weather conditions are obviously much worse. So I think the performance he put in was extraordinary, knowing that he wasn't focusing on it this year. So I think he can go to another level for the Tour de France. He's going to have to train hard, though, with no races, though. I don't know how he would do that. Now, we talk about riding the ergo and doing specific training. for another month or so without a race leading into the Tour de France. Could you do that?
Yeah, it's difficult to say. I mean, I can't speak from experiences. I've never done the Tour de France, or do I climb mountains as a GC rider. But yeah, a month without a race is quite a long time, especially in the lead up to a race such as the Tour de France. But I'm sure he's spoken about it and discussed his preparation plans for the Tour pretty in depth with his coach and his team. And I'm sure he's got a structure worked out that he believes is going to work for him.
Wade, do you think he'll be better at the Tour than he was at the Giro? Or will he pay the price for all the energy that's been spent?
Geez, I don't know what to say anymore. We were so wrong with
that's
our
right.
prediction coming into the Giro.
That's why I'm asking the questions, not making predictions.
Clarify, you were more wrong than we were. I said top 5, you said top 10. Come on.
But we're all glad to admit we were so wrong, aren't we?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Because, now we could look like a hero saying, like...
Yeah.
But
We'll do a couple of takes and then we'll just insert what's the most accurate.
That's right. We'll do this in a few weeks' time.
So do you think he'll be better at the Tour?
Oh, I sure hope so.
Yeah.
But I've regained my confidence in him, that's for sure.
Yeah.
He's completely shown me that, he's not done yet.
Yeah. The one team member I would not want to be at BMC is the mechanic. That final mountain stage when Cadel couldn't get his top 2 gears. Okay, so Cadel Evans, we're going to get a grab from Robbie McEwen later in the show as well, who gives his prediction on Cadel Evans for the Tour de France. So stick with us. Your revelation of the race. I reckon one of the blokes that you were a teammate with will have been a revelation to a lot of the Europeans, Luke Durbridge.
Durbridge, yeah, he's...
6th in the time trial, breakaway deep into the 3rd week.
Yeah, I mean, everyone knows how good he is. He showed that last year when he won the prologue, beating Wigo in the Dauphiné.
Yeah.
He's already come out and showed that he won 5 or 6 races last year, and now he mightn't have won as much to date this year. Mind you, he still had a pretty awesome start to the year, but he's focusing on bigger races now. 6th in the Giro time trial, which is 55 k's long, for a 21-year-old is a pretty awesome feat. And then not to take it away from Alex Dowsett, who won the thing, and he's the same age as me, so that was also pretty incredible.
We know that he's a good time trial. We know he's got an enormous amount of power. But how significant is that breakaway that he went in late in the Giro, 2.5 weeks or so into the race, having dragged that big lump of a body that he has over those mountains to still have some power?
Yeah.
It must be pretty significant that he's still going strong late in the Giro.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it all come, I think, from the last week of a Grand Tour when you're going for breakaways. I remember when I was trying for breakaways in the Vuelta 2 years ago, the biggest thing is just wanting to be in there more than the other people. I remember I was the first to attack and the last to attack and this and that, but if you want to be in there late in the Tour, you can generally make it happen, but you still need some energy and some legs left.
So who else caught your attention?
Wade, you go.
Mark
Wade
Cavendish.
caught my attention.
Yeah.
or who was more of a revelation then? Cavendish was brilliant.
Yeah, he was. But we'll talk about him later. Revelation.
Hard to go past Carlos Betancourt for me. That white jersey.
Yeah.
And in fact, all of the Colombians.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Colombians in general. Look, Betancourt for sure took the white jersey. He was racing with Rafael Maica right down to the end. So both of those guys. But I'd have to throw up, he's not young, but Adam Hansen, the Aussie stage victory. A breakthrough victory for him in a Grand Tour. So I think that was a bit of a revelation, even though he is an
I'd
older
have to
rider.
come and throw Navadaskas in the basket. He's what he showed was, he nearly won 2 stages, 1.5 stages.
Celebrated too.
But he was riding, especially later in the last half of the Giro. He was, for a big guy, I mean, you talk about Luke Durbridge being a big guy, and I know Navadaskas is bigger again. And the way he was climbing and finishing off those stages was very impressive.
His sports director, Charlie Regilius, I spoke to him the day after he won that stage, and he said to me that the other teams are going to have to be very concerned once Navadauskas realises how good he is. He won a stage, but he doesn't quite get.
He's a very quiet, taken back personality. He doesn't say too much. He's definitely. I don't think he realises how good he is just yet. And when he gets that.
Finally, on Mark Cavendish, here's a stat for you, Wade. You know I love a good stat. He's the first sprinter to win the points classification since 2008. The last guy to do the Giro and the Tour points class was Abdu Jabarov in '94. Do you think Cavendish can win green at the Tour?
Oh yeah, after showing what he did here, for sure. And it was so good to see him win that points jersey, especially after last year getting it taken by 1 point. I think it was by Rodriguez last year after dragging his butt up over those mountains, and this year over the snowy mountains. Yeah, it's just awesome to see him do that.
And your experience up against the sprinters, what was the reaction from you personally and the rest of the team when Magnus Backstedt sent out the tweet, Lee Howard should replace Matt Goss on the flat stages as the #1 man?
Yeah, if I'm honest, I didn't even see that tweet until after, when a couple of people told me. But it certainly didn't get spoken about within the team. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, Matt Goss is still the #1 sprinter in Orica, and he shows that. Okay, he got beaten by Mark Cavendish, but so did every other sprinter in the peloton in the Giro and most races. You know, so he's still our best sprinter.
Yeah, and the reaction as one of the riders to Daniela De Luca testing positive?
Yeah, it was a shock, not a good shock, that's for sure. Especially, you know, cycling is moving in such a positive direction now. Probably not the right word to use right then. Yeah. Forward direction, in a good direction. Moving away from the doping scenes, and then someone like him who's already been positive once before to come back and test positive again, it's shocking.
Well, we look forward to seeing you when you get back out on the road. But next up, we have to declare our Champion System Weekend Warrior. And the Champion System Weekend Warrior winner this week was Paul Mapp with Navadauskas, the man you've spoken about extensively, celebrating that second place finish.
Yeah, not the stage victory, but the celebration for second, it was incredible.
How would that feel?
Oh, well, I can speak from experience. I've done it myself in a World Cup once before, and I think it was a Colombian took a lap, or so. Oh no, Hong Kong took a lap on us in a scratch race in a World Cup, and we didn't see him, and I saluted, thought I'd won, but it can be pretty embarrassing.
So next up, we talk to Robbie McEwen, who gives us his view on the Giro and predictions for Cadel Evans at the Tour de France. Earlier on, I caught up with Robbie McEwen, who was at a launch for a new Scott bike, and he plays a role within the Orica-GreenEDGE team, so we got his views on that team, what they can do at the Tour de France, and also asked him about Cadel Evans. End of the Giro, Orica-GreenEDGE, how did you assess their performance?
Well, I thought the boys did the best they could under the circumstances. Obviously, it wasn't ideal with Gossie getting sick, Lee Howard breaking his collarbone. That really decimated our sprint train and the ambitions of the boys in the sprints at the Giro. They went there for one without one of our most important lead-out guys in Daryl Impey. But then for those things to happen with Lee Howard is now on the recovery road. Gossie is just trying to get better and get healthy again and start to get himself ready for the Tour de France. I think the really encouraging things about the Giro was Brett Lancaster stepping up out of his role as lead-out man at the Giro to actually doing the sprints and running 2 top 5s, and he rode really, really well. The other thing was Peter Weaning on the attack almost every day in the mountains, really animating the race. Even up to the second last day, the hilltop finish in the snow. There was Peter Weaning still with 3 kilometres to go right at the head of the race. Just got a little bit unlucky not to get a real crack at a stage win. I think probably a day that he possibly could have won. He unfortunately crashed out of the break with 2 others. So there are a few misses, but really encouraging results. Luke Durbridge rode his first Grand Tour, got all the way through it, put himself into a breakaway deep in the tour, sort of round into the 3rd week. So all in all, got to take the positives out of it, although it wasn't a great race for the team.
What about Matt Goss? He's been under a lot of scrutiny. How do you rate him against expectations from when he signed with the team?
Well, when you've won Milan-San Remo and then you sign for a team, the expectations are going to be huge. He had a very good first season, won a stage in the Giro, went very close at the Tour, was right in the battle for the green jersey last year, really until the moment he got disqualified and lost a lot of points, and then that was sort of all over. Didn't manage to jag a stage, but rode a very solid season. This year, he's really focused on the Tour de France. Tried to be good right from the start, and he's been, I would say, more than solid. Rode a very good Tour down under, a couple of close calls, won a stage at Tirreno Adriatico, so things were really looking good. He was heavily focused on a stage win at the Giro within the first sort of 12 to 14 days. You get sick, that's cycling. It's happened to the best of them. It's happened to everybody. You get sick at a bad moment and it's all over. So he just has to regroup, get healthy, move on to the Tour de France. And looking at this year's route of the Tour, I think there are some very suitable stages for Matt Goss. So, he's just got to stay positive and not think about the criticism, because it's very easy to criticise. It's hard to get out there and win races. and that's what he's just got to keep concentrating on.
Understandably positive about the chances of Orica-GreenEDGE, but what about Cadel Evans? Can he get the yellow jersey again?
Well, looking at the Giro d'Italia, which is just finished, and history tells us that it's near on impossible to do a double, let alone just perform at a high level 2 Grand Tours in a row. Cadel's done it before, where he's performed well in the Tour de France and again at the Vuelta a España just after it. But I think it's a different ballpark moving from the Giro to the biggest stage race of the year, the Tour de France. Different level intensity, everyone's there at their best, and also coming off this Giro in particular with that foul weather they had all the way through, it really drains the riders, and I honestly think it's going to be so tough to back up and do a good performance. I wouldn't be putting money on him riding a top 5 at the Tour de France.
Robbie, thanks for your time. So Robbie McEwen, understandably optimistic about Orica-GreenEDGE and a little pessimistic about Cadel Evans. Doesn't think he can back up after the Giro. What are your thoughts?
Well, obviously I hope that Cadel can back up, and
I think even Robbie hopes that Robbie's wrong.
Yeah, I'm sure he does. Look, for us, we know that Cadel Evans said that he wasn't focusing on the Giro d'Italia, but yet he still rode there and went well. So if he's being completely honest, he should be in a better position come Tour de France time, so therefore he should perform quite well. I think, fingers crossed, he's still going to be up there.
My only concern is the cold weather. If you can avoid getting sick. How difficult is it, Lee, when you're that lean, racing in the snow to avoid getting sick?
Yeah, it can be difficult. I mean, finishing a Grand Tour by itself when you don't have cold weather like that is hard enough to stay healthy afterwards. But he's a seasoned professional. He's done that many Grand Tours. I'm sure he knows what to do between now and the Tour. As I said before, I'm sure he has a pretty good plan in place between now and the Tour, even though he doesn't have any racing. So
It'll be meticulous.
Very meticulous, and I'm sure he'll go up another level.
And Wade, I think it's best we avoid predictions with Cadel at this stage,
because
he tends to prove everybody wrong.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit, Lee, about Robbie's role within the team.
Yeah, Robbie's, I think his official title is a sprint coordinator, or I'm not actually sure.
Or is it just Robbie? Is
yeah,
that his
just
title?
Robbie.
Robbie McEwen as
Yeah.
Robbie McEwen.
But he helps out. He does a lot of stuff with our VIPs. He does a lot of stuff at the Tour de France with the sprint train. He goes and reviews stages in front of the race. He looks at the last 5 or 10 kilometres of the race and then gives feedback to the directors, which is then fed on to us as riders through the race. And that's priceless information. When you're going to a sprint stage, you have no idea, you've never seen the finish before, so to have it relayed onto you from Robbie McEwen, you can really trust that information.
Yeah, and just put the brakes away, because he normally went through the corners without braking.
And
Lee,
if he
thanks.
tells you to brake, you know you have to brake.
You have to really brake. Lee, thanks for joining us. All the best with the recovery, and hope to see you with a number pinned on again soon.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Next up, we go and talk to Geraint Thomas. Unashamedly here on the bike lane, Geraint Thomas is one of our favourites. He provides plenty of personality on and off the bike, and Scott caught up with him a little bit earlier on.
Well, firstly, Geraint, welcome to the bike lane, and congratulations straight off the back of the second place at the Bainrundfahrt.
Cheers, mate. Thanks. Yeah, it's a nice way to start the middle part of the season, really. Yeah, after a break after the classics and things. So all building up to the Tour. Nice, dude.
Well, look directly off the back of the Giro d'Italia, and now we're all focusing on the Tour de France, which no doubt you'll be an integral part of Team Sky, trying to defend that title of Bradley's from last year. The public debate really has all been about Froome and Brad, and now that Brad pulled out of the Giro, how do you see that planning out, and what's the effect been on the team itself?
Well, I think obviously Brad will probably be going better in the Tour than what he would have if he had finished the Giro. He'd probably be a bit more motivated as well now. People are ripping into him a bit, so I think he'll have a bit of a point to prove. From my point of view, as long as they work together, and I don't care who wins out of the two of them, and if they get first and second, it just means more prize money for us. So that's a good thing. But I think the main thing is just those two being professional, and being able to work with each other, and as long as that happens, it'll be great. But it's just whether there's a rift in the camp, and then that's when it could all start to go into pot a bit, but I'm confident that won't happen at the minute anyway.
After such a successful 2012, do you guys internally feel any extra pressure to live up to those standards?
I think so. Like when it came to the Classic, it did feel like everyone expected us to just rock up and start winning, even though, you know, it was the first year that we really concentrated on it. And I guess, yeah, we did sort of feel a bit of pressure from that from last year. But the way the stage racing has gone this year, you know, every stage race while they're on the podium, at least that success is continuing. I think it's just the Classics now that really need to focus on and try and make that next step up.
Well, Luke, speaking about the Classics, mate, and particularly yourself, a couple of weeks ago on the bike lane, we had a little bit of a dig at you about the crashes that you had through the Classics, all at the wrong time. What was going on there? Why couldn't you stay on your bike?
Oh man, well, San Remo was just my fault, just a racing crash, you know, on a corner. The other two though, Flanders and Roubaix, just got taken out, and that was it. Nothing I could have done. It was just one of those things, just bad luck, wrong place at the wrong time, and it's tough, you know, especially in Roubaix. It's hard to be in top 10 on every sector, and it was probably one of the only ones where I was 20 or so and just got taken out. So in a crash in front of me. So I think it just shows the Classics, you know, that's why they're so special. It's just anything can happen. It's all down to that one day. It's not like the Tour or the Giro where you can have a bad day and lose a minute or so and get that back. You got 17 other stages to get it back or whatever. So.
Well, it's all more motivation, isn't it, for next time? Look, you put out a tweet during the Giro d'Italia after Danilo De Luca tested positive. Very colourful tweet. Really like that. What do you think? You actually do think he's a dickhead?
Totally. I think, like, there's just no room for that anymore, you know? It's just totally different mentality in the whole sport. And, you know, with all the teams, you know, Sky and Garmin, and, you know, I think the whole sport has just changed. And obviously there's still a few knobheads around like that. But, you know, I think it's time for tougher punishments as well. I think that's the one way to stop them doing it.
Well, look, good luck for you. Good luck for the entire team. And let's wait and see what happens between Brad and Chris. Regardless, you guys are going to come in as the favourites for sure in July.
Cheers, mate. Thanks.
Geraint Thomas, true to form. He took it on the chin. The questions about the crashes throughout the Spring Classics, delivered a straight line on Danilo De Luca, and let us in on the fact that Wiggins-Froome, it is not a media beat-up.
It's not, is it? It's real. They are really actually head-to-head, and I think it's going to be some very stern team meetings before every stage, just to be clear. And we saw last year, remember when Froome went on the attack and he was told to come back and wait for Wiggo? Well, they're going to be very clear before every stage.
It'll be more difficult this year to manage the role of Wiggins than it was last year to manage that secondary role of Froome. Those team meetings would make for great television. Yeah. I've said it all along.
Yeah, you'd be able to cut the tension with a knife in those team bus meetings. And yeah, with Wiggins pulling out from the Giro, he's got something to prove now, just like Grant said. And yeah, it's going to be great to watch.
And speaking to Robbie McEwen earlier on, it didn't make the interview, just off camera, he said that he expects the podium at the Tour to be Froome, Contador, and an unhappy Wiggins in third. But Geraint Thomas will be happy because the money will be rolling in. But next up, we go to the Target Healthy Living Tips. Last week in the Target Healthy Living Tips, Scott caught up with Kylie Andrew at the VIS and spoke about sugar. This time, he talks about sports drinks.
Well, we're once again back at the Victorian Institute of Sport with sports dietitian Kylie Andrew. Now, last week we spoke about the basics in sugars and sugar intake. This is another one, sports drinks. I guess it's fluid intake, so another basic topic, but something that gets overlooked a little bit. The pros and cons of having sports drink.
Absolutely. Look, there's lots of benefits to having sports drink if you're having them made up according to the right composition. So certainly sports drinks provide carbohydrate, which is a good energy source for athletes, both during exercise and after for recovery. We also know that if it tastes good, we drink more of it, and that's good for hydration as well, and that's scientifically proven. But sports drinks also contain sodium, and that sodium plays a really important role, not only in helping to replace our sweat losses of sodium, which is important for the heavy sweaters and the salty sweaters, but that sodium also maintains the osmotic drive to drink, which means athletes will drink more of it and stay better hydrated. And it obviously helps also our body to retain the fluid that we're consuming.
Well, talking about fluid, just basic plain water. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here, but is it not a good thing to have just too much plain water without any nutrients in it?
certainly if you are a heavy sweater and a salty sweater, it is important that you are replacing those salts and electrolytes as well. So plain water won't do the job adequately for you.
Okay, so it's okay in smaller quantities, but just too much plain water is basically just flushing the system out.
Absolutely. So for most of us, plain water is okay, but for our athletes, our heavy sweaters, they need something a little bit more.
What about a little bit of sea salt in that plain water? Would you recommend just putting a little pinch of sea salt? I've heard that as well.
Yeah, look, I don't, because I think the thing with our sports drinks is they are scientifically formulated to have the right concentration of carbs, the right concentration of sodium. So we don't recommend that. But if you are drinking water during exercise, it is okay then to eat some salty foods afterwards to help with that rehydration process.
Yep. Well, there you go. Well, speaking of aqua, it's coming from the skies above as we get rained on down here at the VIS. Thanks, Kylie.
That's our pleasure.
So it turns out that water always isn't necessarily the best solution as it flushes the system somewhat. Well, that's it for this season for the Target Healthy Living Tips, but we've got one big battle to come. It's McGrory versus Wallace, and it's the HOT LAP who will make the final decision. This is the moment that I've been waiting for, the HOT LAP, where Wade Wallace gets a chance to shut Scott McGrory up, the Olympic Games gold medalist who keeps telling us how good he was. Scott, we're heading out to the HOT LAP. Shane Kelly has set the benchmark. He was a kilo rider. It's 1 minute and 20 seconds. Wade's got the international experience as well as a Canadian. On the way out there, were you nervous?
No.
Fair enough, a confident Scott McGrory. Let's go and have a look at it. It's out at the Q Boulevard. It's 950 metres around. It's Wallace versus McGrory. Wade and Scott had a dispute that we couldn't settle, so we decided the bike lane better go back to the Yarrow Boulevard and settle it for good. So, Olympic Games gold medalist, all the pressure, Canadian, been in the country for 8 years. Who's going to win?
You know, talking about pressure, what pressure? I'm just going to have a bit of a ride and see what happens.
Your reputation's on the line.
I have no idea the mindset it takes to be an Olympic gold medalist. No comprehension, but I do know from my Bendigo sources you've been on the ergo for 3 months straight waiting for this day.
So my form has completely faded away. I put on about 7 kilograms.
He's back now.
Yeah, so look, I'm going to be up against it today because I'm really unfit compared to Wade, who trains all the time.
Whose
It's
legs
his
are
life.
hairier? Look at this.
Oh, you just let them grow just for today.
All right, we're going to settle it on the bike as opposed to the banter. But we've got to go to the toss of the coin to get the decision on who goes first. So he gets to choose.
I'm younger.
He celebrated just recently 8 years in Australia.
Just yesterday.
So wait, heads or tails?
Tails.
Time to be deported.
Tails it is. You get to choose first or second.
I'm going to go first. No, second. Second.
Oh, you...
Second, because I'm going to do a warm-up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Shoes undone.
5, 4, 3, 2, don't false start, 1,
Go, Scotty!
He's got it whilst he's inside. He looked good off the line.
He did, and there's no way he's going to lose this thing.
You keep talking yourself down.
No. I'm gonna give it a good crack. But Scott, I mean, like seriously, you forget how good some of these guys are, like him.
Yeah.
And man, Darren Lapthorne said he's been riding off his wheel in Bendigo.
He has actually been training in Bendigo, Scott McGrory. He's been doing the bunch ride with Darren Lapthorne, former Australian champion, still racing at a really high level. And Scott's been swapping off with them. And then, as you alluded to, ergo sessions in the afternoon. He's 43.
I know.
He's been retired for nearly 10 years.
But that's the thing. To be able to do what he's done in his career, you got to have that mindset. It's not about anything except just winning.
He's a bronze medalist. He's a bronze medalist as well from the Olympics when he was 18. He's inside. This is desperately quick. McGrory knows the lines. Wade Wallace is getting nervous and he stops the clock.
Cold start, that was terrible. That hurt.
How do you reckon you'll win?
It felt like a 140, but I reckon I did a 120.
Shane Kelly did a 122, roughly. 122.2 I think it was for him. How do you think you compared to him?
I'm a 123. He's the minute man.
Oh, you've got 1 minute correct. What do you reckon the next digit is? Is it a 1 or is it a 2?
Oh, it's a 1.
It's a 1? The following digit?
What did quickest ever? 17? I'll say a 16. 116.
He's confident. He's good.
Now,
118.1.
That's all right, 118. Okay, I've beaten the minute man. I'm happy with that.
You could be Australia's next big thing.
I'm getting bigger all the time. Every month I'm off the bike. Right, challenge is on now. I feel confident.
Let's go, Wallace.
All right.
You get on the line. You're representing Canada.
Go time.
I think he needs about a month of training.
Oh, you're confident. He's got some spring in his step, Wade.
I'm actually scared, and it's not so much about beating the time, but it's actually being in the state you're in about 2 minutes time.
It hurts.
The state that he's in.
This is virtually a kilometre
looks like
time
it
trial. Well, it is a kilometre. And we know that the lactic acid developed in a kilometre time trial is more than a rider doing a 4,000 metre pursuit.
Yeah.
So enjoy this. It's going to hurt.
I'm
He's
more
creeping on the
of
line.
one of those guys
He's
that I'm more of one of those guys that wins races through attrition. I'm not much of a time trialist.
Okay, that's enough hedging your bets. You ready to roll?
Let's go.
Let's go. 5-second countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2, go Canada. 1, 0. Away.
Come on, Canada. Oh, that was...
How are those speed plate pedals going for you?
Struggling to get him in then. Was I that bad off the start?
I was a little concerned about you coming off the start. There was a little bit of nervous tension in the pedal trying to get it in. But once you got rolling, you looked solid on the bike and you looked convincing.
Good core strength. Been doing all my core training, you see.
Courtesy of the VIS.
There you go. That's what it is.
So you've got to be happy with that 118.1.
Look, I'm talking this up. I am. 118, I think that was a pretty good time, considering my state. And I know I am not fit.
Still breathing very heavily.
I am. I can't help it. But I am nervous now because if Wade does beat me, and I'm talking it up saying I'm going to beat him, but I'll be quite embarrassed if he beats me.
He's actually pretty fit. Let's turn our attention now down to the bottom corner to see how we go. So he's...
You've got to get around that bottom corner. It is quite tricky, I must say.
It is. Well, he's been going for 50 seconds, so he's got less than 30 to get here. So he should be approaching that bottom corner.
Should be coming out of it now.
Now, I think he was genuinely nervous about how much he's going to lose to you by.
Oh, look, I have no doubt. No, hey, who knows? Who knows? Let's see.
Well, the fact that he's not in sight yet, and we've just clicked over 110.
Here he comes.
You've got him covered, but he's not too far off the mark.
Come on, Wade
Wallace, desperately close. 124.3. McGrory is the winner. Do we hear the national anthem again?
Not the Canadian one. Where is it? Where's the crowd?
Close.
What do you think?
Do I look like you did?
Oh, we both look pretty tired. Yeah.
You sound like he did.
Grimace. God.
I'm just glad somebody's got to do the hosting role.
Yeah, where's your time?
I choose not to race. I know what the result would be.
Going to go on forever.
I know what the result would be, and I'd be well behind both of you guys. It was in the 120s. Shane Kelly,
really?
Shane Kelly, a four-time world champion,
120s?
did a 122.
I can't beat Shane Kelly.
124.3.
Serious?
Scott McGrory, Olympic Games gold medalist from Sydney to the bike lane. Congratulations.
Thank you. This is as big a result as I've ever had in my life. I really appreciate it.
So anybody who comes down to the Yarra Boulevard, you can do the time and see if you can take the yellow jersey away from Scott McGrory. 1:18.1, and when you come, expect to see him doing lots of laps to see whether he can better the time.
This is far from being finished, Scott.
Ooh, bring it on. All right, a bit more home trainer for me. So to be continued with Wallace, I think.
We're never going to hear the end of it. Scott McGrory not only has beaten Wade Wallace, but he's set the fastest time. How does that compare to Olympic gold?
Oh, it's up there, isn't it? Absolutely right up there as far as I'm concerned now. And look, remembering that the older you are, the better you were. So my performances in the past were extraordinary now when we look back, but this is right up there. Sorry, buddy.
You would have been so hopped up on beetroot juice, I'm going to call it that.
Are you going to wash his car?
No, there's more challenges to come. There's many, many more. So we'll just put this in the bank and we'll see where we sort of come out at the end.
Oh, I don't know about
Ice
that.
hockey it is.
We'll
We can
strap
do some hockey.
strap some goalie pads on you, get you out there.
Yeah.
There's got to be something I can beat you. And like, I'm not going to fool myself. I mean, I've never, ever had that mindset of like, you know, what you've accomplished in your sporting career. I've never had that. I've never had that commitment.
Yeah,
to
you're
dedication.
actually nice.
Table tennis?
But there will
You're
be
pretty good at table tennis.
Yeah, the Caucasian invasion they call me. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a good job.
Ready to go. Okay, so they still haven't settled it. So in the seasons to come, we're going to look for more battles between Wallace and McGrory. Send in your suggestions. What could they do to give Wade a chance to beat Scott? And next up, we're going to discuss you and what's on your mind. What's on your mind? Our favourite this time around, we're going to gears, so we're going to Wade.
About half a dozen people throughout this series have asked about electronic shifting to see if it's all it's hyped up to be and if it's actually progressed enough to be used in the pro peloton. So DI2. Well, but the thing is that, Wiggins, we saw him with his bike throw, he dropped his chain. Cadel, those guys are actually using a 10-speed SRM chain set because they're just starting to drip those 11-speed out ones. And so they're using an 11-speed Di2 with 10-speed SRM. So, I mean, you can't go and blame a group set for dropping a chain, right? That would happen mechanical group set or whatever. I've heard nothing but good things. I've had Dura-Ace 10-speed and 11-speed, and I absolutely love it. I haven't tried Campy EPS, and I've heard mixed things, but we were just talking to Lee Howard, and he said he hasn't heard a bad thing about it. So
it makes lattes for you.
It's got that big milk jug battery that you can squirt a latte out of.
But there's this theory that it's all new, and this is advanced technology. But Mavic came out with the Zap electronic shifting in about, was it 93 or 94? It was around that period.
94.
Yeah. So it took a while for electronic to get mainstream because it just disappeared for a long time.
Yeah, and this stuff.
No one was brave enough.
Mectronic, it's called, and this was in '99 or so, and this was the wireless shifting, right? And so this is.
You'll be able to use that in Leroyca soon.
Exactly.
Electronic shifting, wireless, way back then in the 90s, and of course it was a disaster. But hey, it was way ahead of its time. And
but every failure is a step closer to success.
Absolutely. It did cost Alex Zülle a podium at the Vuelta one year, though. Mechanical problems with it.
But it's not going to make any difference, electronic versus cable, to whether you win a race or you finish second, surely.
It won't. No. I don't think it'll win you a race, but it might very well lose you one. If it doesn't work, if the battery dies, that's where it could lose you a race.
Everyone said when a Di2 came out, it was just this problem that, they're solving a problem that doesn't need to be solved. And it's kind of like mobile phones. When they first came out, you didn't feel like you need one. But once you start using it, you can't.
And who thought you needed a camera on it?
Yeah, exactly. But you start using it, and the ease it takes to shift gears just absolutely flawlessly. And I think one thing that I'm a little bit surprised that no one's done yet, and I know SRAM possibly will be the next one to release an electronic group set, but if they were to release wireless, I think that would actually differentiate them because we still have cables, they still come unplugged, they still, if it doesn't work, you have to get out your voltmeter. It's really quite hard to troubleshoot, even though there's only a few things can go wrong. But
yeah, I mean, it's...
We're in a wireless world. What's the conclusion? Get it if you can afford it.
Yeah, it's still expensive.
And just enjoy it.
Yeah.
Because it's fun to ride.
Yeah.
So that's what's on your mind. We've really enjoyed this segment. And although this is our last episode for the season, please throw in plenty of suggestions. We'll stockpile them because we're going to be back. We're going to have a Tour de France preview as well. Speaking of which, the Tour de France, to wrap things up, we have the Dauphiné, the Tour de Suisse, and now the guys that didn't race the Giro, we get a look at their form guide. I can't wait to get over to the Dauphiné.
Just like you said, it's a dress rehearsal for the Tour de France. There's some of the mountaintop stages that they're doing in the Tour de France, and the main contenders that'll be at the Tour de France will be there. It's going to be.
Well, you mentioned Contador. Obviously Wiggins, Froome, these guys. We saw Cadel at the Giro. Rodriguez. He's going to have another full crack at the Tour de France with more mountains this year, less time trials. Maybe he's going to be in the mix.
And even a guy like Jürgen van den Broek, who can't win the Tour de France, I'm convinced of that, but he can shape the podium. He can finish top 5 and shape the podium. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of those guys. Well, we've really enjoyed the whole season, and I assume you two have.
Yeah, I've loved it.
Yeah. I got a win. I'm wrapped.
You've had a win, so of course he enjoys it, and that's the way he likes to go out for the season. We've got a lot of people to thank that have actually made the show possible. The whole team at the Sweet Shop, Ben and John, who have been a driving force in the background as well, and the crew at the Bike Gallery, the Salford Lads Club, and also Target as well, plus Champion System, and here at Northside Wheelers. But most importantly, you, because we've enjoyed interacting with you via the comments that come in and trying to respond to some of the questions. So we hope you've enjoyed it, and stick around. We'll be back sometime soon, particularly with the Tour de France preview.